races of the year and sporting events. We did bad, so all good.
Loeb, how about you? What are you doing, and how?
Yeah, I think there was some talk about Levis as his odds dropped, but Young was the pick. But I don't think anybody saw Houston doing what they were going to do. They kind of downplayed C.J. Stroud. They were going to take a defensive player, and then ended up taking him and trading back in to get Will Anderson. I think Houston completely blindsided everybody on what they were going to do. And the Colts. We talked about the Colts' prototypical quarterback being a pocket passer, Will Levis, and they went 180. They went with the dynamic running ability and passing ability of Anthony Richardson, maybe a little more of a project. So that was a surprise, but I think the Texans really surprised everybody here in the first round.
I totally agree with you, and I was taken by the fact that Will Levis didn't go to the Indianapolis Colts. I've been projecting that one in our mock drafts for weeks, and so the rumors leading up to the draft kind of confirmed my thinking. And then when they went another way, I was really thrown for the rest of the draft. But I was stunned that the Texans made the kind of move they did. It almost felt like something you do in Madden, where you want to trade up and you want to get as many first-round picks as possible. To draft 2-3, get C.J. Stroud, get your franchise quarterback, the face of your franchise, on offense, and then do the same on defense and get Will Anderson right after. I really liked it. I know there are a number of people who thought they gave up too much, and I understand why. Because 2023 draft picks aren't that valuable. 2024 draft picks are going to be insanely valuable because the quarterbacks that are going to be available in Caleb Williams and Luke May. But that's is it Luke May or is it Drake May? Whatever his name is. Drake May, the brother of Luke May. But Jose, what did you think of the moves by the Houston Texans? And do you think they were winners or losers of that kind of trade that they made with the Cardinals?
I do think they gave up a lot, but I do like aggressive teams that are going to say to go for it. I think they're looking at the Titans, who are slipping, and the Colts, who are kind of rebuilding, and they're kind of looking at it and going, hey, we got to compete with Jacksonville, and we might have a chance. And D'Amico Ryans, who else is better to use Will Anderson than him? So I think that I like to see the aggression, but, yeah, it was a lot to give up.
Definitely a lot to give up, but I like what they did. That said, on the other side, I love what the Arizona Cardinals did. You not only got arguably the best offensive lineman and best offensive tackle in the draft, thus giving Kyler Murray a great piece for when he's healthy, but you load up on draft picks for next year. You have a lot of draft capital you can maneuver, whether to make your team better on the field, through trades or actually through selection. But I thought it was just a brilliant draft by them. Another team that made a trade, but this one was to move back only one spot, was the Chicago Bears. They didn't take Jalen Carter. Instead, they took a tackle, Darnell Wright, who I loved, but it wasn't Peter Skoronski. Adam, did you like what the Bears did in this draft, and did you like that trade moving back?
Yeah, I think the trade moving back was okay because they still got the guy that they wanted. I'm with you. I thought Skoronski would have been the guy there. They went in a different direction with Darnell Wright, and apparently he was rising up the draft board within the last week. But, they slid back. They got compensation for it, and they still ended up with the lineman that they wanted. So, all in all, you can't complain with what they did there.
Adam, who was your big winner of the first round?
I think winner of the first round. Um, it's hard to say. I have a couple teams that I think did really, really well. And I think kind of Pittsburgh falls in that category because I think Pittsburgh got the lineman that they needed to protect Pickett and Broderick Jones. And then they still got the guy that they wanted, which you said probably no player fits the team better than Joey Porter Jr. in the draft. And they got him later on. So I think, for Pittsburgh to get the lineman that they needed and then get Joey Porter back originally when they wanted him early. So I think Pittsburgh probably won that first round, at least for the two players that they really wanted. They got them both.
One of our viewers on TikTok Live is saying the Houston Texans. MJ is saying the Houston Texans were his big winner. Lope, who was your big winner of the first round?
I really liked Seattle's draft in general, but I like that they got Jackson Smith and Jigba to go along with Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I don't. There's great pieces now where Geno Smith has weapons and he just has to get the ball to playmakers. So I thought they did really. That fell nice into their lap.
I completely agree with you on the Seahawks. I thought they had an exceptional draft. And Adam, couldn't agree more. I thought the Pittsburgh Steelers did a brilliant job, especially on days 2 and 3. Yes, I like them getting the last kind of stud offensive tackle that was available, especially jumping ahead of the Jets to do it and securing that pick. I thought that was a really great move. But what they did getting Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Washington, wow, what a way to load up your team in ways that I think a lot of people didn't expect. But Mike Tomlin just continues to build a great roster. And yeah, they stood out to me. But first round winners for me, how can you not say the Philadelphia Eagles? I mean, they got two dogs. And I'm not just talking about Georgia Bulldogs, but two guys who hunt. Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith hunt quarterbacks. They hunt running backs. They put fear into opposing offenses. I love what the Philadelphia Eagles did because they didn't reach for somebody. They didn't take a position that was necessarily of need or go after chasing. They just got two highly talented players to fill out a roster that's already so complete. I really like what the Eagles did day one. Obviously, I think that their draft overall was really strong, but I think day one really proved to me that Howie Roseman really is the king of the draft. And while a number of people are probably giving him too much love, I think it's deserved. And the DeAndre Swift move, I love it. But that brings us to the Detroit Lions. Adam, what did you think of the Lions? Did you like that pick or not?
I did not. I think Jamar Gibbs could have been there in the second round for them. I think that was way too early for him to be taken. And then they slide down and take Jack Campbell from Iowa. It's okay. I think the Lions, I was expecting more out of them to trade back and get extra picks, but to take Jamar Gibbs at 12, which I think he would have been later in the draft, I don't think that was all that great. But to circle back to the Eagles, I think you're 100% right. For Jalen Carter to fall to number 9 after Jason Hargrave signed with San Francisco, it's 1,000% a home run for Philly. And then to come back, like you said, later in the draft and pick up Smith at the end of the first round, I think Howie Roseman did an excellent job there. And for Jalen Carter to fall to them and to trade up that one spot to get him was just a home run for Philly.
What I love about it so much as well is you pair Jordan Davis with Jalen Carter. And obviously there's familiarity on the field, but there's also familiarity off the field. And I feel like Jalen Carter, from the situation he's coming from off the field, he needs both an established team, a team with veterans, a team with leadership. The Eagles check that box. He also needs a friendly face. I also think it's important that he doesn't go to a new place and feel like people are lecturing him or people are on his case and he doesn't have a friend to turn to. So I love the situation for Jalen Carter overall. And the Lions moved, I get it more so now because they moved on from DeAndre Swift. First of all, I feel like you gave up DeAndre Swift. I feel like you threw him away at a certain point. Highly talented player. I know he's got 1 year left of a contract, but I thought they gave him up a bit too easily and too cheaply. But I also thought Gibbs was going to be there. You could have gotten him later in the first round. You could have gotten him with the second pick of the first round. And I think getting Jalen Carter or getting Christian Gonzalez, adding to that defense, I don't get the Jack Campbell move, but fine. Like, you wanted a linebacker. There aren't that many strong middle linebackers. Okay, go. But the running back at that spot just made so little sense to me. Lope, did you agree with the move? Did you disagree? Do you think the Lions came out ahead after the DeAndre Swift trade? What do you think?
I think I was one to have Gibbs at a first-round grade on him, but that was I agree, it was just way too early. Even if you're going to get rid of Swift, like you said, he would have still been there. And I don't know how much that's an upgrade, but when you go by need, I mean, the Lions needed defense, and I know Campbell, I don't know how many people had a top 20 player grade on him, but and maybe it's intangibles and they're looking for a leader. But
did anyone have
Lions,
a top 40 grade on him, Lope? Like, was he anywhere close?
So. I wasn't reading anything. I was reading definitely a round 2, even some with the round 3. So if the Lions do not win their division this year, they have nothing to look back than the draft on the reason they didn't, because there's a lot of talent that I think they passed up.
One of the things I also want to make note of, and it's relevant today because we're starting to hear about some of the players who aren't getting that fifth-year option. And running backs are a position to me in which giving them a fifth-year option may be worth it, but in reality, you get more value out of a fifth-year option of a defensive player. And so because you're getting them in their prime, running back, that fifth year may not matter. By that point, either they may be run down or you may be moving on from them. I hate the move overall. I think it is a mistake. And I don't like what the Lions did in the first round. I think they redeemed themselves in the second round. I love Brian Branch for them. That's the kind of pick I thought they needed to make. Get better on defense, get physical, get aggressive, add on the back end. Like, yes, you have a pass rush with Aiden Hutchinson. I still think they missed out on being able to pair Hutchinson with Jalen Carter. That would have been just an insane duo. But really disappointed in what the Lions did in day one. A team that I think really did do well on day one. And it was more out of just things fell in their lap. New England Patriots. And yes, I am going to take a curtain call on this one. Adam knows it because he's here. He's heard me go on and on about Christian Gonzalez to the Patriots now for 3 months straight. But that was a home run pick. I don't necessarily love what the Patriots did afterwards. Day 2 and 3 was more Belichick over the last 5 years. A lot of head scratchers of like, why are you taking so many special teamers? But Christian Gonzalez is a shutdown corner. He's a number 1 corner. The Patriots needed a number 1 corner, and they got him. And you got a 4th round pick. Now, I wish you had gotten more out of that 4th rounder, as it turns out. I wish that had been a better player, maybe. But I love getting Christian Gonzalez. Adam, are you ready to give me my flowers, or do you feel like the Christian Gonzalez selection was an obvious one once he fell?
Well, the flowers are ordered and they'll be delivered on Thursday.
Thank you.
So make sure you're home because you called this one the entire time. And you're right. He fell to New England, and New England had to take him. It was absolutely a perfect pick for them. And it's funny because when the linemen started to make a run, and we talked about the Jets, it was a home run. They were going to take an offensive lineman. But they all started getting drafted and had nothing left there. And to me, the Jets missed an opportunity here. They did get Will McDonald from Iowa State, which is fine. But could you imagine pairing Christian Gonzalez aside from
I was saying the same thing. You have 2 shutdown corners. That becomes an unstoppable secondary.
Unbelievable. To add to that defense, I think the Jets missed a huge opportunity here. You know, Emmanuel Forbes is a nice player, went to Washington, but Christian Gonzalez, to me, would have been the pick for the Jets to put across from Sauce. We talked, lock down that defense. Huge in the secondary. I mean, man, missed opportunity there. But, yeah, for New England, absolute no-brainer. Christian Gonzalez was the guy here. New England got their guy, and you called it. You called it for weeks that was the guy that you wanted, and he'll be playing in New England next year.
I love your take, though, because I had the same thought. Like, when Christian Gonzalez – first of all, when the Patriots trade back and the Steelers move up, it assured that the Jets weren't going to get the offensive lineman that they wanted. That, like, one of the top 5 offensive tackles, top 4 offensive tackles wasn't going to be available. First of all, I love that by the Patriots and the pettiness of Bill Belichick to make that kind of move. But
100%.
Yeah, because he hates the Jets more than darkness hates light. But that said, I was surprised that we've gotten to a point now where people think if I just add pass rushers, it's a good pick. I feel that way about people in the secondary. I feel that way about adding shutdown corners. You can't have enough shutdown corners at this point because the offenses in this league are so talented. The receivers are so talented. There are more nickel and dime defenses than ever before. I want talented members of the secondary. And to your point, we saw the Seahawks kind of do this by selecting Witherspoon. If you put Sauce Gardner with Christian Gonzalez, you can play so much man coverage with your corners, you can devote so much of your scheme towards other things. I feel like you can get greater pass rush from Christian Gonzalez being your second corner than you can from Will McDonald being a pass rusher. So I felt the same way you did. Really smart on your part. And again, one of the reasons I like the Seahawks draft, because building good cornerbacks is never a stupid decision. It's always a good move.
Yeah, 1,000%. And the thing is with Buffalo with Diggs and Miami with their receivers,
yep,
with Hill and Waddle and everybody, like you're building it in your division, right? And to beat those guys, like it just, to me, the Will McDonald pick was questionable.
I thought it was a reach, and I thought it was also, to me, it was a panic move. It was one of those that the guy they wanted came off the board right before their pick, and I think that the Jets panicked. I don't think they had a good plan in place of, hey, what if there's a run on offensive tackles before us? I think the Jets assumed that Will Levis was going to be picked before them, and thus one of those offensive linemen, by the sheer default of, hey, there are only so many players who people really want ahead of us, so we'll get one of them. I think they just assumed that they were going to get an offensive tackle. And hey, Jets, you may be winning with Aaron Rodgers now on your squad, but you're losing like you have in the past because you didn't get the offensive lineman you needed. And I agree with you, Adam. It really sets them back because I like the center they drafted, Tipman, in the second round. I do like him. I think that was a solid pick. But if you had paired an offensive tackle with him, then I would be talking about the Jets having one of the better drafts given they got Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm very lukewarm on them. Lope, how do you feel about the New York Jets? Do you feel better than Adam and myself do?
No, I don't. I thought there was question marks. Even the Tipman pick, it's going to be interesting to see where they put him on the line. But I thought they could have done a little bit better to really stand out in a tough AFC conference. And to me, we're still looking at it with a little bit of holes, I feel like.
So if we put the Jets kind of in that lukewarm or loser category, we put the Lions in that category. Adam, what's another team that you would put in the loser category?
Well, to me, it's the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson at number 8 in the draft. The running back was not a huge need for them. They had all the wide receivers still on the board, and not to mention they need a defensive tackle. And who was there? Jalen Carter. They passed on him too. They drafted a cornerbacks and safety later on in the draft. They already had drafted that or addressed that in free agency. So for Atlanta to go after Bijan Robinson when they need wide receiver help, they need defensive tackle help, and maybe the best defensive tackle in the draft in Jalen Carter, and they would have had their pick of any receiver that they wanted. I'm not really sure what Atlanta did there. So I think that was I got them in my loser category with the Jets as well.
I feel like what the Falcons are doing, like, yes, Bijan Robinson was the most talented running back in college football this past season, and Kyle Pitts was the most talented tight end in college football when he was at Florida. I feel like they're adding that kind of talent, but that's not necessarily what wins a championship team. I feel like they're missing some of the core pieces of the trenches of the offensive line. And yeah, I don't like the move. I think Bijan Robinson could be a star in fantasy, but I certainly don't like the move if the Falcons are trying to contend for a Super Bowl within the next 5 years. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But and this piece is another reason why. Lope, who's a team that you would put in the loser category?
I was going to say the Cowboys had a bunch of reaches, especially if we're just talking, the draft overall. I thought they tried to outsmart people and took a few chances.
Why didn't they take Michael Mayer, Lope? Like, you needed a tight end. I felt like he was a Jason Witten 2.0. I didn't get that.
And I didn't get the tight end they drafted.
Right.
It's just, yeah. He's more of a run blocker. It doesn't make much sense. I thought Mozzie Smith was a bit of a reach. There was a lot with the Cowboys that I thought they screwed up.
What was funny to me about the Mozzie Smith is live during the draft. Obviously, we did a live show here on TikTok Live and YouTube, and when Mozzie Smith was drafted, all I saw was Smith to the Cowboys. And I assumed it was Nolan Smith. And I was like, oh, man, you're pairing Nolan Smith on one side with Micah Parsons on the other. Like, man, that's scary. And it was Mozzie Smith. And I was like, oh, like, that's a good pick. Like, that's solid. And on one hand, I like it because they need a run stuffer. but I thought it was a reach. I thought they could have taken Michael Mayer in the first round. They could have taken Mozzie Smith in the second round, and there's your tight end defensive tackle pairing. But the manner in which they did it really didn't make sense to me. I thought the Cowboys, I agree with you, had a miss. My team, in terms of loser in the first round, Washington Commanders. Like, what are you... Emmanuel Forbes? I did not think... I was really surprised he was taken. I thought Christian Gonzalez was going to go to them. The fact they didn't go with Gonzalez was surprising. Forbes, I know, has ball skills and like had a number of interceptions last year, but he's kind of skinny. Like his technique isn't smoothed out. I think there are times he can get exposed. I thought it was a reach, and Washington again had so many needs that when you reach, if you're a team that reaches, I think that's a big miss. The other team I'm going to bring up, and I love to open this up to discussion right after, Quentin Johnston to the Chargers. I didn't get that one. Am I missing something? Is Keenan Allen or is Mike Williams, like, are they in a contract dispute? Like, is there a reason that the Chargers needed a wide receiver? That's a team that I actually thought could take a running back and then could move on from Austin Eckler. But I certainly thought they could have addressed defense. I don't get this one. So can you explain to me why the Chargers took Quentin Johnston?
I'm thinking just because of injuries. And the Chargers, they do have a good core wide receivers, but at some point in time through every game through the season this year, they've had guys out or with injuries.
That's a good point.
They haven't had a consistent core. And I think Quentin Johnston, and he was my favorite receiver in the draft. He's a big guy at 6'3". So I think, just because of the injuries that they had, they want to keep that rotation going for Herbert out there. So my assumption is that's why they drafted him, is he was there and with the uncertainty wide receiver.
Lope, I'll turn this one to you then. Which team made the better decision in drafting a wide receiver? The Chargers with Quentin Johnston at 21 or the Vikings with Jordan Addison at 23? Because I didn't like either one. I hated the Vikings, but I'm curious to know which one you thought was a better move. Which team was smarter to draft a wide receiver?
I'll lean towards the Chargers. I think, as Adam pointed out, with their injury issues in the past and just trying to get Herbert as many big, tall weapons as it is. But the Vikings, I thought, they have major concerns on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be as valuable spreading the ball around to every wide receiver as Justin Herbert will be.
I didn't understand I like Jordan Addison as a wide receiver. I actually thought someone was going to get a steal by selecting him. But what surprised me about the Jordan Addison move is the Vikings have such a bad defense. You would think that they would want to, address that in the first round. But okay, whatever, fine. Be the Vikings. Getting a question in here from TikTok Live. GX asks, over under total wins Jets 10.5. Okay, we're going to go around on this. I'll start, then Adam and Lope will finish us off. GX, this is what I would say. I'm going to take under 10.5. I think that you're going to get, I think they're going to be a 10-win team, but I actually think that's where their ceiling is 10 wins. I feel like getting 11's really hard. This is a really talented conference, and even though that they're a really good roster, I think it's going to take them a little bit of time to get going. I don't think Rodgers is going to step in right away and be successful. And again, the Jets don't have an easy schedule, so for a number of reasons, I think that it's 10 wins for me. Adam, what do you think? Over, under 10.5 wins for the New York Jets?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think 10 wins, 9, 10 is right where they're going to be. It's a tough division. I think Miami, as long as Tua stays healthy, Miami's going to be make a strong push. Obviously, Buffalo's going to be there. We'll see what New England's kind of in that middle road. We'll see what they do. But, Aaron Rodgers is coming in. He's learning a whole new, core of players. Obviously, the offense that Hackett's probably going to put in will be very similar to Green Bay. But then again, he's got to learn this now. Now he's at the OTAs. He's doing everything.
He's doing everything right. That's right, Adam. He's not being a Packer complainer.
He's not doing what he did to us the last 2 years, but not showing up for anything. So maybe that could be progress. But I'm with you. 9-10 wins for this team right now is a ceiling. And if Rodgers does play that second year, I think we can explore a few more wins. But I think 9-10 is right on the mark.
Lope, we shift to you now. What do you think? Over, under 10.5 wins for the New York Jets, to answer the question here on TikTok Live.
We're all in agreement. I got them at about 9 wins. It's too tough of a division. Those games with Buffalo, Miami, and New England, they could easily split, if not lose two of them. Aaron Rodgers, new parts, new team. Robert Saleh, we're still not sure on coaching wise. So there's just too many factors to trust anything more than 9 or 10 wins.
What I'm also going to say is this, GX. I could see the Jets making a second round of the playoffs, maybe even making it to an AFC championship game, believe it or not, because their roster's so good, and by that time, I could see them getting hot. But 11 wins seems a little bit high to me, so I'm going to go 10. GX has another question. Over under total wins for the New York Giants at 9.5. I actually really like what the Giants did. I think they had an under the radar, really good draft. They addressed a number of positions of need. And keep in mind, they also traded for Darren Waller during the offseason. So they're a much better team on offense than they have been in the past. But I would still actually go with the under on this one. I'm going to say 9 wins. Again, I think that they're in a more competitive division than people think. Even Washington, even though at times we make fun of Washington, they seem to put up a fight every year at this point. And I feel like the Giants overperformed last year. I think they're going to backslide a little. I have them at 9 wins. Adam, where do you see the Giants this year?
Well, I think Dable did a nice job with them last year, and whether they overachieved or not, I think they're heading in the right direction. So I can very easily see them getting 10 wins. I think they had a decent draft, like you mentioned. They got Deontay Banks that'll help that defense. But the one player that I really liked that they got was Jalen Hyatt, a wide receiver out of Tennessee in the 3rd round. I think he could be very productive for them and help that offense. So I think Dable's going to keep that going in the right direction. I'm not a huge fan of Daniel Jones, but I think he can, under Dable's guidance, can get a little bit better and bringing Barkley back. And like you mentioned, trading for Waller. I think this Giants team has an upward tick. So I think 10 wins is very doable here.
You know, I was big on Banks. I thought he was one of the under-the-radar cornerbacks that was really worth taking, and I thought they got him at a good spot. And to your point, Jalen Hyatt adds a level of wide receiver talent that they've been lacking. We saw it in that Alabama-Tennessee game last year. When he gets deep, he can put up points on his own. Lope, where do you come out? Over under 9.5 wins for the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, I really like what the Giants do outside of Daniel Jones. He's the only factor. But I would say that it'd be worth taking a flyer, especially depending on the odds, but on an over, because I really like Dabble. I like the structure of the team. They have a chance to win, and I think they're the second best team in the division behind the Eagles.
The thing to me is I think the gap between them and the Eagles is pretty substantial, but I agree. We'll get to Larry, we'll get to your question from TikTok Live in just one second, but I want to answer Christopher's first. Christopher on TikTok Live asked, thoughts on Pittsburgh's draft and where they land as of right now, and where they land in the season. I love their draft. I thought the Steelers actually were one of the winners of the draft. Not only did they get an offensive lineman and offensive tackle to protect Kenny Pickett, but they got the perfect cornerback, Joey Porter Jr. They got a tight end in Darnell Washington at a ridiculous spot in the draft, just a total steal. I think Mike Tomlin just hit a home run with his draft. He got a lot of Steelers too. Physical guys who are going to be ready for a Baltimore Ravens game in December, and that's what you want to see from a Steelers draft pick is physicality, toughness, and kind of the endurance on the physical side. It's not someone who's kind of weak. So I love what the Steelers did. As for where it vaults them, I think they also had one thing go there against them during the draft, and that is Lamar Jackson signed with the Ravens again. So you have Joe Burrow in that division, you have Lamar Jackson in that division, and you have Deshaun Watson, who we expect to get better with a whole off season of work with Cleveland's staff. So I think that the Steelers are very much in the same place they were before, which is they're a 500 team. And I actually think that's really bad for them because I don't think Kenny Pickett's the guy. I thought they got a quarterback in a bad draft year. It's like getting Boomer Esiason, which is great. You got the best quarterback in a year that no one's going to remember for quarterbacks. So ultimately, I do think that Kenny Pickett isn't going to be the guy. You're building a good roster, but how long do you have this Kenny Pickett experiment? It'll be a year or two, and by that time, will the league have kind of moved on from the Steelers? So I think they're a 500 team, but I don't think they're competitive in the AFC, especially given the offenses that are around the AFC. Adam, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you're right. I think that they're going to give Pickett the ability to be the guy. Obviously, drafting Broderick Jones trying to get some guys around him. But ultimately, I'm with you. I don't think he is the guy. But as far as Pittsburgh in the draft, I mean, I have them as one of the top 2 teams that won this draft. Not only did they get offensive linemen, like we mentioned, Joey Porter Jr., like we mentioned, but one of my favorite guys, and I know he's a Badger, but Keanu Benton. I really think he's going to be underrated going to this draft. His Senior Bowl kind of got him up the list a little bit, but I think drafting him at defensive tackle is very good. You mentioned it, Darnell Washington. I'm not really sure why he fell to the 3rd round and had a lot of tight ends taken over him, because he was such a dynamic player and such a physical presence on Georgia, and I still haven't found out why he's fallen in the draft. And Nick Herbig, another Badger, inside linebacker, can play outside as well, too, for them. So I think they did really well in the draft here, but 100% with you. I don't think Pickett's the guy, but I think they're going to give him what he needs to see if he is or not, and then move on from there. But, yeah, Lamar Jackson re-signing for Baltimore is huge for that division and really hurts Pittsburgh in the long run.
We're going to answer this question from Larry on TikTok Live, who asked Cardinals draft thoughts. Larry, I love what the Cardinals did. First of all, they got a great offensive lineman, a great tackle, so when Kyler Murray gets back healthy, they have a piece to protect him. I love what they did there by trading back. You didn't give anything up. You got something, as in you didn't take a player later at a worse spot. And maybe more importantly, the Cardinals loaded up on draft capital for 2024. And 2023 was a good draft. 2024 is going to be an all-time draft in terms of top quarterbacks taken. For so many reasons, the Arizona Cardinals now are really going to own that draft, and they're going to be able to maneuver, trade, build almost an entire roster for maybe those 2 first-round picks. Because if the Cardinals are as bad as we expect them to be, and if the Texans are as bad as we expect them to be, those could be 2 top 5 picks. One of them could be a number 1 overall. I love what the Cardinals did. So for me, it's an A-plus draft for the Cardinals, but not for 2023. It's all about looking forward and really building up, whether it's draft capital or talented roster pieces for 2024, because 2023 doesn't matter. The Cardinals aren't going to be competitive this year with Kyler Murray injured. Lope, would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely. I completely agree. For the Cardinals, it's not about this year, it's about next, and they're still going to have options when they move DeAndre Hopkins and possibly Kyler Murray if a quarterback is in the way. So you're right. The roster they have this year will not be the roster they have next year and the future. So everything looking towards the future, but it's looking bright if they can make the right moves and push the right buttons.
I'm really surprised that DeAndre Hopkins is still an Arizona Cardinal, if I'm being honest. I thought that he was going to get moved, especially when he came out with that CBS Sports video where he's shaking his head around which teams he'd like to be on. I thought that was a good indication that he was on his way out, so kind of surprised by that. Another question here on TikTok Live. GX asks, what's one team that is hyped that won't be as good as projected? One team that I think is hyped that won't be as good as projected. That's an interesting question. Feel free, guys, to jump in. I'll say this. I think the Jets aren't going to be this juggernaut right away. I think it's going to take a minute for the Jets. So I also think the Lions aren't going to be the juggernaut day one that we think they are. A lot of people are talking about the Lions being this, amazing team. They were hot last year, but they still have a number of issues, their defense being one of them. So I think the Lions are a bit overhyped. You had one more question, GX, and I want to make sure I answer this one as well. What's one team that is that's underlooked right now that will shock some people? I'm going to say a team that, again, this is a bad one because they've been a competitive team over the last few years, but I think they're not getting enough attention and enough respect. The Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills had a great draft. The Buffalo Bills have a great roster. Josh Allen is in his prime. He's not old. He's in his prime. Early years of his prime. I don't know why everyone's like the Buffalo Bills window is officially closed. So that's a team I think people are underestimating right now. Buffalo Bills are just as likely to win a Super Bowl this year as they were last year. Adam, am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. For me, on these two questions, the first one I would say is an overrated team, or a team that is expected to be high expectations that's going to fall back to me is San Francisco. I think the uncertainty at quarterback with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, yes, the defense is there, and they do have some offensive weapons, but that quarterback uncertainty to me, I think, is going to catch up with them. And the team that's a little maybe below the radar that's going to make the jump is Seattle. I think Seattle wins that division. I think they had a really good draft. I think bringing Geno Smith back is a good thing, another year of continuity with them. And I think Seattle makes a leap, and Seattle wins that division this year, and San Fran comes down a rung.
I love that take. I think I agree with you. 49ers are going to slide back a little bit without the quarterback play. I also expect that Christian McCaffrey or Debo is going to get hurt. Like, how much can we expect those two weapons to be healthy for an entire year? And with you, I also agree. Seahawks, they were a playoff team last year, and they only got better. So good call on you.
Yeah, and the thing is, they got Witherspoon, who could potentially be a shutdown corner. Obviously, it might take a little year or two to get there. But then, as Lope mentioned, they got Smith and Jigba at 20. I mean, you pair him with that receiving core, and one of my favorite players in the draft was Charbonnet out of UCLA, the running back. Got him in the second round. I love him. They got some interior linemen later on, but between Charbonnet and Smith on offense and Witherspoon on defense, I think Seattle is going to be primed to win that division this year.
No, one of the things I love what Seattle did is they have competition now at certain positions. It's both depth and competition. So I agree with you. That running back position, I didn't think Kenneth Walker III was a superstar running back where he didn't need anyone else by his side. I actually think he's someone who will benefit from having another running back who's getting a lot of touches. I love what they did at the wide receiver position. To your point, that might be the most talented wide receiver threesome in the league. Lope, to the question that was on TikTok Live, what's a team that's being overrated and what's a team that's being overlooked right now?
I think overrated. I'm with you on the Lions a little bit. It's a little bit too much hype and love just because we're trusting in the Lions. But also the Baltimore Ravens, a little bit too much love. This is Lamar coming off an injury. He's been injured the last 2 years. Is he going to stay healthy? Is it all good? And was there any fraction between that? And then a team that is being kind of underlooked. I like what the Carolina Panthers did, and I think Bryce Young and Frank Reich can get things going. They also used a lot of their cap to get different free agents, DJ Chark and such, and that's a very winnable anybody kind of division. So keep an eye on Carolina.
I love your take on Carolina, Lope, for a couple reasons. One, I thought they had a great draft, and I think they've put in with Frank Reich, they've put in something where they know what they're building, and there's no rush, so that they're building the right way, putting the pieces together. But to your point, I don't think enough people are talking about what Carolina did in free agency. Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst. They're putting together a number of, and those are a number of players that I like. And it just so happens that they all, they're all being assembled on the Panthers. But that's a much better roster offensively than I think people are aware of. And defensively, they were drafting talented players for years. Burns, J.C. Horn. They've got guys on that defense, so it's just about whether the offense can get enough going. Bryce Young, if he's got protection, if they can keep him healthy, he'll have some weapons. So I agree with you. I really like what the Panthers did. I like that they got Bryce Young a wide receiver and paired him with a talented wide receiver, a guy who could be a number one. So I really like what the Panthers did as well. GX is asking on TikTok Live, how many touchdowns does Aaron Rodgers throw this season? Over, under 28. We're going to go to our resident Aaron Rodgers expert. That would be Adam. Adam, over, under 28 passing touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers.
Man, I'm telling you, for me, I mean, I have to look to the under, and not just because for my disdain for Aaron Rodgers. But, I mean, like I said, his play last year, he only threw for over 240 yards 4 or 5 times last year. He was very pedestrian. I think he only had one game with 3 touchdowns. Otherwise, it was 1 or 2 or none per game. Learning, all of his new receivers. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's a super talent for sure. I know he brought Alan Lazard over, but let's be honest, Alan Lazard didn't have much production with us in Green Bay either. So, I know his passing yards under 4,000 is probably a good look, but I would think under, was it 28.5? You said under 28.5 touchdowns. I just don't see Aaron going out there slinging the ball around. I know he was 2-time MVP. He had a down year this year, but let's be honest, he had a lot of talent around him in Green Bay. It's not like we had a bunch of schlubs up there. You know what I mean? He was throwing to nobody. We had some pretty good, Dobbs and Watson. Watson came on for that 4 or 5 week stretch there. We had Aaron Jones in the backfield with A.J. Dillon. He has some good players there. So I think the Jets wide receivers, although Wilson is a talent, it's a little bit of a downgrade, I think. And I cannot see him throwing for up to 30 touchdowns next year.
Loeb, what do you think? Over, under 28 passing touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers next year?
I'm with Adam. I'm on the underside. I just don't think the Jets are going to be running and gunning and throwing with that kind of a defense. They just really want Aaron Rodgers because he protects the ball. He makes good veteran decisions. And I think they're going to use tools for him to win. So I don't see them letting him throw it 50 times every game and sitting back and just chucking to get numbers high.
I totally agree with you, Lope, and I think that's a really good point, which is Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to throw with the same rate or at the same rate as some of the other quarterbacks in the league because they are going to have a good running game. And I actually think if they have Aaron Rodgers passing too much, that leaves him vulnerable behind an offensive line that we really don't know about yet. So I think they need to use Breece Hall. I think they need to use Bam Knight. I think they need to use this Michael Carter the second. They need to continue to use the running game they have, because if they expect Aaron Rodgers to drop back and throw 40, 45 passes a game, okay, maybe he dazzles you, but eventually he's not only going to throw some picks, but he's going to get hit. And my concern for the Jets is, to Adam's point and to your point, Lope, people are coming in with expectations of Aaron Rodgers in his prime. I know he's a year plus removed from an MVP, but that's a year plus removed in your late 30s. This is a much different Aaron Rodgers. I expect him to just it's going to take a month at least for him to get really into it. Okay, that only leaves 3 months of season left. Do I think 28 touchdowns feels it's around that level? So I think Vegas does a very good job, but I would go under 30. So to me, it's like, yeah, I could see him hitting 28, but 30 touchdowns, that seems a tad bit high. GX, who continues to just ask some great questions, asks, how many receiving yards does Garrett Wilson achieve this year? Over under 1150, so 1,150. I'm closer towards the over on that one. I could see him and Aaron Rodgers developing great chemistry, and I could see when Aaron Rodgers has a favorite wide receiver, he targets him, and that guy gets a lot of love. So I could see Garrett Wilson having a really good year, but that's an example of, I could see Rodgers at times doing better in terms of passing yards than actually in terms of touchdowns. I think when it comes to touchdowns, I wouldn't be surprised if they're pounding it into the end zone more than they're throwing it. Adam, what do you think about that over under 1,150 receiving yards for Garrett Wilson?
Well, he had just over 1,100 last year. And I think you're right. I think if Rodgers does develop a chemistry with Wilson, it can be a lot like Adams, right? He's gonna force the ball to him. So I can see Wilson get any yards, not necessarily a lot of touchdowns. Wilson only had 4 touchdowns last year. But actually, one thing to think about, and like I said, that 28 and a half or closer to 30 touchdown number for Rodgers, I believe it's going to be under. But one thing in consideration is that Jets defense. Is Rodgers going to have 1 or 2 more offensive possessions every game because the defense is so good, or the turnovers that he might get in really good field positions? So you could get an extra 4 or 5 touchdowns just because that defense is so good with the Jets.
It's a great point because the Jets really are a top 5 defense. I mean, they're young, they're fast, they can turn you over, they can get sacks. To your point, Packers were good on defense, but they weren't nearly to the level the Jets are, and that is extra possessions, and that is field position. Lope, what do you think? Garrett Wilson over under 1,150 receiving yards.
I'm with you guys. I think it's kind of a coin flip, but I would say the better chance would be over. When Aaron Rodgers picks a receiver, he usually sticks with that one, and I think that Garrett Wilson's going to be his go-to guy, so I think he's going to get the majority of the targets.
Shifting back to the draft for just a second, I want to touch on Will Levis. We haven't talked about Will Levis at all. Will Levis obviously found a home in the second round with the Tennessee Titans, but I wanted to rant on this for a second because it was one of the moves that was the biggest head scratcher to me, one of them, of the draft. Because if you liked Will Levis enough to draft him, why would you not take him in the first round and thus get that 5th-year option? By drafting him in the second round, even if you like him, and if he succeeds, you will have to pay him 1 year sooner. And I don't understand that move by the Titans. And I wanted to ask, is that just me? Was I the only one who responded so negatively to that move by the Titans at that time? Or do we think the Titans actually got maybe a discount because, hey, they don't have to pay him first-round money, but they do have him for 1 less year? Adam, what are your thoughts on Will Levis going to the Titans and that 5th-year option not being available?
Yeah, I've said it all along. I'm not a fan of Will Levis at all. So for him to fall in this draft, I'm not surprised. I did read that it seemed like a lot of his interviews with teams that he came off a little arrogant, a little cocky. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. That's just some things that I read. But I think Tennessee got a discount here. I think that he fell in their lap. You have Ryan Tannehill with one more year left in his contract. It's almost kind of the same with now. I think Hendon Hooker, to me, is a little bit better draft for Detroit because you have Goff and Tannehill. They both have 1 year left in their contract, no guaranteed money after this year. And now you put a young quarterback in behind him to learn for a year under the rookie contract. If Tannehill is out, you can slide Levis in. Obviously, Hooker's still recovering from that injury. But if Goff's out, you can put Hooker in. So I think Detroit and Tennessee kind of like had a little bit of value here to position themselves with two quarterbacks that only have 1 year left in their contract to see what will happen through the season before they decide on what to do.
Want to give a big shout out to those watching on TikTok Live. Larry, we appreciate your support. GX, thank you guys so much. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Make sure you guys hit that follow button and you're following Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We do an NFL show every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So make sure you guys follow us. That way you know every time we're live and can join the conversation because we're all about getting fans the opportunity to be on-air talent. Lope, we talk about Will Levis. We talk about him not having that fifth-year option with Tennessee. Did you like that move, or do you feel like Tennessee didn't make the smart decision by waiting until after the first round?
Well, I think it shows that Tennessee had just as many questions as everybody else did on him, but I think they were understanding. They were in fear that they might not get a quarterback. So if you like the quarterback, eventually you're going to have to pay him. So I don't know that unless they're really on a bargain and think that they're going to have to get pieces around him the whole time.
You just think of like a Mac Jones, or you think of a Kenny Pickett. Those are guys where that fifth year might be really important because that may be the year where they ultimately, that's the break or bust kind of year, or boom or bust kind of year. And I question whether Will Levis will be at that very point. He's not going to play his first year because it's going to be Tannehill. So he plays his second year. That gives him really 3 years, really 2 years, by the way, of being able to see what he has before he's in contract negotiations. So yes, it's 4 years of ownership, but it's really 3 years before you have to open up the contract negotiation. And if he plays well or doesn't, that's going to impact how you can negotiate. And I wonder if that really backfires on him later on.
It could, like Daniel Jones and the Giants have.
That's right.
But I think the Titans knew that they were really kind of boxed in and they needed a quarterback. So they feel like that's the route to go, and they still got a good offensive lineman. Some say one of the better ones in the draft in the first round. So I don't think it's a terrible move, but it could be a gaffe a couple of years from now.
Yeah, I was also surprised that they got Skoronski. On one hand, I love it because it's a very Mike Vrabel type of player, very physical in the trenches, mean, aggressive. I love that. But I was a little surprised in that I thought there were other positions they could have gone towards, and I also was surprised they just didn't draft a quarterback at that time. So I guess it worked out because they got their quarterback in the second round. First of all, again, want to give a big shout out, Larry. I think your Cardinals had a great draft, so even though 2023 will be disappointing, I think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful about the Red Sea in Arizona come 2024. GX has a question. GX, you can ask as many questions as you like. You don't have to worry about that. Your question is regarding Breece Hall, over under 1,000 yards. I'm going to say under, and I'm going to only say that because he's coming off an injury. Well, two factors. One, coming off an injury, so I think the Jets are going to be careful with him. I think he's going to be on kind of like a pitch clock with how many snaps he gets, how many touches he gets. I also think that backfield is going to be relatively deep. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets add another running back throughout the next few months. And finally, the offensive line of the Jets just isn't that good. So if they had a better offensive line, maybe I think Breece Hall would be able to get that 1,000-yard mark. But I'm going to say under 1,000 yards for Breece Hall, even though I think he's enormously talented. Adam, what do you think? 1,000 yards for Breece Hall?
100% agreeing with you. You hit my two main topics are offensive line and coming off injury. He has a long runway ahead, and there's no reason to force him back into action and really pound him down. So offensive line and off the injury, I agree with you, under.
Lope, what are your thoughts?
I'm in agreement. I think you hit the spots. There's just too much uncertainty with the offensive line.
Another question that GX has, what team is going to pick up Zeke? what I'm hearing now is the Cowboys are still in running for Zeke. Even though they drafted Deuce Vaughn, which was another great story. I know there were kind of two outstanding kind of family stories of the draft. One was Joey Porter Jr. for me, obviously going to the Steelers. The other was Deuce Vaughn. His father's a scout for the Cowboys. He got to call his son and tell him he was being drafted by the Cowboys, commuting into work together. That's just a great story altogether. The NFL definitely milked it for what it was worth. But I think the Cowboys could easily bring Zeke back. I'm just not seeing a lot of teams that are interested in Zeke, especially now that the Philadelphia Eagles have gone with DeAndre Swift. Zeke's going to end up on a team that I don't think he's going to be happy with. So I think he will be willing to actually bring his money down to stay in the spotlight and play on a competitive team like the Cowboys. And I think the Cowboys are willing to keep Zeke because, one, Jerry Jones is about that money and he understands marketing. It's always good for him to have Zeke with the star in his helmet. But I also think there's enough depth there. Tony Pollard coming off an injury, Zeke's familiarity. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Cowboys. Lope, we'll start with you on this one. Where do you think Ezekiel Elliott starts or plays his career, plays his season in 2023?
I think I'm with you. If there's any team that's going to want him, it's just Dallas because it's familiar. If he brings down money, otherwise, if he chases, he's going to be on a team that's not going to make the playoffs or just in obscurity. But no matter where he is, he's going to be limited touches. But I think it made a lot of sense there. I think Dallas might be coming back there.
Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think taking less money to go back to Dallas would probably be a good thing. It depends how long he sits for, whether it takes less money to go to a non-contender, or if it gets to the point where it's 4 or 5 weeks in the season and he still hasn't signed, which is probably unlikely. But does a team like Buffalo, does he sign with a team like that needs kind of a little bit of depth in the backfield that could be a contender? It'd be interesting to see where he falls in there. I think that Dallas is probably the best option, but does he hold out and try to get with a team, 8-9 weeks in the season that could be making a playoff push?
No, that's a great call. And GX just asked about that as well. Would Zeke be a good fit in Buffalo? The answer is absolutely. He just has to be willing to play in the cold and also play a very supporting cast kind of role. Like, he's not a star. He's not going to get a lot of the attention. He's going to have to know his role. But if he's willing to do that and do it at the right price, I think Buffalo would be a great fit. Getting a question here on TikTok Live from Michael. What are our thoughts on the Broncos offseason? Well, I feel like the Broncos won their offseason because they got Sean Payton. You got the most talented head coach that was available. You're going to upgrade the leadership and the intelligence of the people making decisions on a weekly basis. So in that way, I think the Broncos definitely won their offseason. As for their draft, I think they did pretty well given where they were selecting. They didn't have a lot of picks, obviously, trading to go get Russell Wilson. I thought they did okay. I thought they added talent. I think Marvin Mims is a nice pick because I think at one, either it means they can move on from Jerry Jeudy in a trade, or it just adds depth at that position. The AFC West is so hard, as GX alludes to. I don't think Denver did enough to move up to the second best team, but could they be the third best team in the division this year as opposed to fourth? Yes, and I think Sean Payton is building in the right direction. Maybe most importantly, I think what you learn this offseason is who owns the Broncos. Who's in charge of the Broncos? Who's going to command the locker room? Who's making the decisions? Who's the big swinging D of the Denver Broncos? It's Sean Payton and not Russell Wilson. So I think that's really important because last year we saw Russell Wilson take control of that locker room and that franchise, and it was the fast lane to disaster town. And I think that Sean Payton's going to do a much better job. Adam, what are your thoughts on what the Denver Broncos have done this offseason and what they did in their draft?
Well, I think you're right. Sean Payton there is home run for them. The only thing that was really concerning with this draft is Marvin Mims. I like the draft choice there, but after that, they went defense, 3 straight picks. Now, unless my eyes were deceiving me, Denver's defense was pretty good last year, and if they had any kind of offense, they would have won probably 6 more games. Now, granted, there's a lot going on there, right? Between Hackett's offense and Wilson and all the other things that could be a play, and maybe Payton can iron that out. But I thought maybe in this draft they would have gone a little bit more offense, especially running back. They actually still need a running back, and one of my favorite players in this draft was Tyjae Spears, and he ended up with Tennessee. I think that could have been a really good fit there too. So I'm really surprised that Denver didn't go more offense in this draft than taking Marvin Mims and then going defense, 3 straight picks.
The only reason I would counter that, Adam, is this was a deep defensive draft. I don't think there was nearly as much talent on the offensive side of the ball. So if you don't have a lot of picks and you're drafting later, in the fourth, fifth rounds, I feel like you're still trying to get like the best player available for the most part. I felt like that was more on the defensive side of things. I get your point though that they really didn't address the needs that they had on offense, but I felt like a lot of those positions had kind of been robbed earlier in the first 3 rounds, putting Denver at a disadvantage. That's the only thing I would counter that with. The question that we're getting about the Denver Broncos here on TikTok Live, over under 7.5 wins for the Denver Broncos. Lope, are you taking the over or the under?
That's close. I got it at about 7 myself. I think I got to still lean on the under. We don't know enough. And yeah, Sean Payton can do it, but is Russell Wilson willing to buy into the Kool-Aid? Like you said, there's so many questions. I would say lean on the under if you're really going to put money on it right now. There's just too much uncertainty, but I do think that they should at least look better. There'll be positive signs, but it'll come later in the year.
I think that's a great point, Lope. Adam, where's your head at when it comes to Denver Broncos over under 7.5 wins?
Yeah, I agree with Lope. I think this defense is nasty, and this is definitely a better than 7.5 win defense. But like Lope said, with Peyton coming in, trying to iron out everything on offense, this might be later on in the year before you get that sorted out. So I think you have to lean towards the under for now.
Question that we're getting from TikTok Live, Christopher asks, is Keenan Allen gone later this offseason with the TCU wide receiver going to the Chargers? I don't think so. I do think it allows them to negotiate with other teams, but I get the sense that they actually want those 3 wide receivers in the building for this year. So I'm going to say no, as in I'm going to say he's still on the team, so no, he's not gone later this year. Adam, do you feel like Keenan Allen could be moved?
Could he be moved? He could be, but I'm with you. I don't think he is. I think he's a good veteran presence to have with these young receivers. Between Mike Williams and Josh Palmer, and now you add Quentin Johnson in there, that could be a really, really good receiving core, but you need a leader, and Keenan Allen could be that leader there, so I think he stays with the Chargers.
Lope, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this just kind of the Bengal model where you just get as many wide receivers as you can around good quarterbacks, and I don't see the need for the Chargers to move anything. That's their biggest.
At 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you ever want to talk NFL, 7 p.m. Tuesday nights, you can always find us, But Fumble Sports. And we're going to close out the show with one more take from everybody, and that is your favorite pick of the draft. I want one player. It could be your favorite pick in terms of you love this player, you love their talent, you love the fit, you love where they were taken. Just give me one player that you absolutely love. Adam, we'll start with you, then Lope, and I'll close it out. Adam, kick us off. One pick that you absolutely love from this draft. Adam, you with us?
You got me?
Yeah, now I got you.
Okay, I got you. I talked about it a little bit before, but Tyjae Spears, a running back from Tulane, going to the 3rd round to Tennessee Titans with the uncertainty with Derrick Henry. He's going to be a very shifty type running back. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He's really shifty. He can run inside and outside. I really, really like this kid. And for him to be in the 3rd round and Tennessee taking him, I think Tyjae Spears can make a difference in Tennessee.
Love it. Lope, you next. Nate, give me one pick that was your love it pick of the draft.
Jonathan Mingo to the Carolina Panthers.
Good one.
I think he's a good wide receiver to grow with Bryce Young. He's explosive, and I think he puts the Carolina Panthers, like I said, in a position to compete for the division this year.
I'm gonna give you 2 runners up, and then I'm gonna give you my favorite. I'll give you 2 runners up, and then I'll give you my actual favorite. One runner up is Darnell Wright going to the Chicago Bears. I think Darnell Wright is a stud. He's Trent Brown 2.0. He's big, he's physical, he's scary, and that is exactly what the Bears need on their offensive line to protect Justin Fields. I loved that pick. Wish they had gone offensive line more in the draft, actually, but thought that was a great pick. Another runner-up is Joey Porter Jr. Yes, his father, Joey Porter, was a Steeler, won a Super Bowl there. Great story, but also he's a press physical corner. That's exactly what the Steelers could use. But my favorite pick of the entire draft is one that's going to surprise a lot of you. It's Dalton Kincaid to the Buffalo Bills. I thought Dalton Kincaid was going to go to Adams' Green Bay Packers or the Cowboys. I thought he was going to be off the board. I love what he brings. He is a Travis Kelce-like tight end. He can find space in zones. He's a tough cover in man-to-man. He's really talented. But Dalton Kincaid to the Buffalo Bills is a steal. They have so much talent on that team, but one thing they really didn't have was a middle-of-the-field target between the 20s. Dawson Knox was a good receiver in the red zone, but between the 20s, they're really dependent on their running game and on their wide receiver game, especially on the outside. Dalton Kincaid's going to open that up. I thought it was a great pick for the Buffalo Bills and isn't getting enough attention. And I'm just going to say this, and hopefully the teams that I play in fantasy aren't listening to this broadcast, but Dalton Kincaid is absolutely a player to watch in fantasy football. He is going to get so many targets from Josh Allen, red zone between the 20s. Love the pick, love the player, love the fit. It's a home run for me.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you what, you hit the nail on the head. He can be their Travis Kelce to Kansas City. And he, like you said, he can be so dynamic on offense. I think it's a really good pick. And, yeah, we talked about the Packers taking him, and obviously that's a whole nother discussion. But for him to fall to Buffalo and have him open that kind of offense, I 1,000% agree with you. Dalton Kincaid to Buffalo is a sneaky, sneaky good pick that is going to prove huge dividends for Buffalo.
Watch out, whether you're a team in the AFC East, the AFC, or you're a rival fantasy team, Dalton Kincaid's going to have an unbelievable career with Buffalo. And it's one of those picks where we're going to look back and we're going to go, he fell to 25, and it's going to be like, yeah, because there was a run on offensive linemen, there was a run on defensive backs, but Dalton Kincaid, maybe the most talented tight end in the entire draft, he fell to a team that didn't need him, but is certainly going to benefit from his unbelievable talent. Appreciate all of you guys listening to the show. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Want to give a big shout out to our contributors as always. Make sure you follow these guys. Check out Adam. You can find him at @SpotterAJ. That's @SpotterAJ on Twitter. Adam does a brilliant job for us. Thank you so much, Adam, for all that you do. Also want to shout out Lope. You can check him out at JLopedawg. That's JLOPEDAWG on Twitter. Lope always brings some spicy NFL takes week in, week out. Make sure you guys are following us. Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, and Sports Fumble on TikTok. Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Sports Fumble on Twitter. We put out content every single day. Rants, daily fantasy, and of course betting as well. Make sure you follow us. That way you know when we're live and you can join the show. We do an NFL show every Tuesday from 7 o'clock p.m. right up until 8, just like now. So make sure you guys follow us. Big shout out to those who are watching the show. Christopher, Larry, GX, Michael. We had a lot of great questions from the audience. You guys make our content so much better by participating. So want to show a lot of love to all you guys. Thank you guys so much. We will be back next Tuesday with NFL action, but we'll be back tomorrow with more sports betting action. So until then, have a great day and appreciate all your support. We'll see you soon.